Today is our September Flex Day. Make sure that you read all of the instructions on the link that I have given to you. You have a warm-up that you're going to do, and you will submit that to Canvas. You've got notes to do, and then you have an MXL assignment to follow up with as well. So in your packet, you want to flip to day 2. Yesterday we started with conditionals. Today what we're really doing is just kind of manipulating those statements. In other words, we're going to be flipping hypothesis and conclusion, and we're also going to be doing something called negating them. So yesterday we talked about a conditional is simply a statement that's written in if-then form. This P is representative of your hypothesis, and your Q is representative of your conclusion. And as always, we've got symbols in geometry. So if we see P with an arrow Q, we read that if P, then Q. In our manipulations of these conditionals, we have something called the negation of P, which would be the opposite or the not part of it. So this little guy right here, the squiggle, is representative of a not. So if you go back to our original sentence here, it said if an angle is straight, well, the negation of that would be an angle is not straight, or the negation of an angle with a measure of 180 degrees would be an angle measure is not 180 degrees. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to negate both of those. So if you look at the symbol, not P and not Q. So that means we're going to do the opposite or the negation of the hypothesis, and then we're going to do the opposite or the negation of the conclusion. If you take a look at the example here, they put down if an angle is not a straight angle, then its measure is not 180 degrees. Let's go to the contrapositive. Take a look at that. They have flipped the hypothesis and conclusion, and they've negated it. So this is not Q and not P. Go take a look at this statement. So the conclusion was it was not 180 degrees, so that's come to the first part of our sentence. But the conclusion was it was 180 degrees, that's come to the front part. And the hypothesis was originally it was a straight angle, it's moved to where the conclusion was, and again we've negated it. And there's one other manipulation that we do on conditionals, and that is the converse. And that would be flipping the hypothesis and the conclusion. So this would be if Q, then P. So let's go back up to our example here. All we want to do, this is our hypothesis, this is our conclusion, and all we want to do is flip those pieces. So it would be if an angle measures 180 degrees, then the angle is straight. So let's look at a couple of examples. They want us to write the inverse and the contrapositive. So remember, the inverse means we're just negating. Come up here and look at it. It is not P and not Q. So our hypothesis is if a triangle is equilateral. So negating that would be if triangle ABC is not equilateral, then, and again we're going to negate this. This says then it is isosceles, so we're going to put then it is not isosceles. Let's go look at the next one. We want to write the contrapositive. So that means we are flipping both of these and we're negating them. So notice on the notes that I copied for you, they wrote out that note for you. You are flipping them and you are negating them. So the isosceles comes to the front part and I have to negate it. So if triangle ABC is not isosceles, then, and again the equilateral comes here and I have to negate it, then it is not an equilateral triangle. let's continue on the back of your notes. So we have a couple of examples, and we're also going to look at what we call the truth value. So that means, is the statement true or false? So up here it says, if you have a 95%, then you will get an A in the class. That statement is true. The contrapositive, we want to flip it and negate it. So the symbolism is not Q, then not P. So we're going to take the hypothesis, put it to the conclusion, and negate it. Take the conclusion, bring it to the hypothesis, and negate it. So this would be, if you don't have an A in class, then you don't have a 95%. So think about that statement. If you don't have an A, then there's no way you can have a 95%. That is true. So kind of looking ahead, if you notice, actually let's continue and then we'll take a look. The next one, the inverse, means we want to flip them. So this would become Q, then P. So our statement starts off, we're bringing the conclusion to the front. If you have an A, then you have a 95%. Now let's think about this. Is this always true? If you have an A, does that guarantee that you have a 95%? No, that statement is false. And when we state it's false, we've talked about giving a counter example. So for example, we could have a 94%. We have an A, but we don't necessarily have a 95%. That's the counter example. Now the converse is when we, and I just goofed these up. Let's try again. The inverse we were supposed to negate. It should have been not P, then not Q. So this would be, if you don't have a 95%, then no A in class. Now again, that statement is false. I could again have a, 98%, and that still means I have an A in class. So again, I've proven that statement is false by giving that counter example. Notice here what statements are true. It is the conditional and the contrapositive. And in the second one, we have the inverse and the converse. And this is always going to be the case. These are called logically equivalent. So if they're either both true or both false. So let's write that down. Both true or both false. They go hand in hand, and we're going to write that down here in just a minute for you as well. Alright, the next one. If we get 20 inches of snow, then school will be canceled today. So the first thing we're going to do is flip them and negate them. So again, we're bringing the conclusion to the beginning, the hypothesis to the ending, and we're negating. So this would be, if school is not canceled, then we don't get 20 inches of snow. Next, the inverse. That's when we flip the hypothesis and the conclusion.